Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much for coming here today. It's an absolutely brilliant turnout. I genuinely didn't expect this many people to come to this unveiling, but it's great that so many have taken an interest in this. It's great that the media have taken an interest, been on the radio, the papers, and I'm absolutely humbled by the amount of people who've come here in respect for these people who died that year. So, Yorkshire Belle, the name itself, resonates Bridlington. From an early age, anyone who's ever come to Bridlington has been on the Yorkshire Belle. It's been 75 years of giving pleasure cruises to tourists and residents alike, going all the way up to Flamborough Head, the cliffs, the lighthouse, or even just a trip round the bay. But a lot of people didn't know that there were actually two Yorkshire Belles. The first one was built in 1938, the same place as the current one. And they only ran for 2 seasons because in September 1939 the Second World War broke out, and we'd already been making preparations for another war with Germany, and ships were being requisitioned for Admiralty service. So the actual Yorkshire Belle civilian crews were taken over by Royal Navy crews, and in this case the Yorkshire Belle was known as HMS Yorkshire Belle from then on, or HM Patrol Vessel Yorkshire Belle. It went with several forenames. And so it did a couple of years duty with the Royal Navy, doing its service. Didn't go to Dunkirk, as the Scarborough ones did, but it took part in boom defence duties. And it was during these duties that on the 11th of April 1941, she was in the Humber, just off one of the forts near the Humber mouth. 14:30 in the afternoon, a large explosion ripped the Yorkshire Belle to pieces. All 9 crew were killed. And it's incredible to think that very little is written about this. That people know where the wreck is. People know the name Yorkshire Belle, but few people really think about it, to be honest. And it was never in the papers at the time. And why was it never in the papers? Well, when you think April 1941, it was a very testing time for Britain. France had already fallen. Europe was in a total state of disarray. It was only another month before the Bismarck could break out into the Atlantic. So you can see just how much effort the Royal Navy had to put in order to keep our sea lanes safe. And so vessels like the Yorkshire Belle sinking with 9 crew killed, it was probably one of the smallest news stories of that day, so much so that nothing was ever mentioned. But today that's all changed. Now it is being mentioned in the papers, it is on the radio. People are now going to remember the Yorkshire Belle. We're going to remember those 9 people who died. Now some people have said, well, how many people on the Yorkshire Belle that day were from Bridlington? Well, there were a couple from Hull, a few from Scotland, but none from Bridlington. But the Yorkshire Belle itself was from Bridlington. There is no memorial to the Yorkshire Belle and her crew until today. Bridlington suffered during the war just like any other little town. It was one of the first towns to be bombed, long before the London Blitz really kicked off. In August 1940 there were several bombing raids on Britain where we lost our first pleasure cruiser, the New Royal Sovereign, which took a direct hit in the harbour. Thankfully nobody was on board at the time. So 2 pleasure boats, several shops, businesses, a bus stop, houses. 27 people were killed during the war. They're all buried up in Bridlington Cemetery, all but a few people. 4 of them were servicemen on leave. So today we think, well, what does that mean for Bridlington? Well, out of those bombing raids, we had the first ever George Cross recipient, Thomas Alderson. That put Bridlington on the map, but in a good way. Yorkshire Belle was one of those tragedies that was forgotten about. So I'd like to call for the unveiling. I'd like to call Martin Jolly forward, and one member of the current Yorkshire Belle to unveil the plaque dedicated to the 9 people who died. Today we remember Acting Rigger William Bennett. Able Seaman George Buttress. Chief Petty Officer Ernest Edworthy. Cook James Fagg. Acting Rigger's Mate Daniel Gibson. Stoker First Class William Harrison. Acting Petty Officer Ernest Johnson. Acting Rigger Robert McKelver. And Able Seaman Albert Thompson.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's not just you guys I'd like to thank for coming here today. This small memorial to the Yorkshire Belle was actually quite a large effort. And I've got to give some thanks to the people who made this happen today. First of all, I'd like to thank Andrew Hatton from the East Riding of Yorkshire Council who gave me permission to put this here. Without the permission, no memorial plaque would ever happen. I'd like to thank Martin Jolly and the Royal Naval Association Bridlington branch. Without them, the plaque wouldn't have been paid for. They instantly turned around and said, yep, not a problem, this is exactly why we're here. Dave Standaloff from Royal British Legion Bridlington, Craig Townend and the Hanson's concrete team who actually made and donated the structure free of charge. Craig Leach from East Riding College, Paul Webb of PW Paving, Martin Barnby from the Bridlington and District Submariners Association for organising the actual placement of the plaque with a team of veterans, including Martin Rubery, Bridlington Branch Royal Naval Association Secretary, Barry Clark, Bridlington Veterans Coffee Club, MKM Building Supplies for actually transporting this half-ton memorial and placing it where it is today, the Royal Navy for donating the White Ensign for the unveiling, and all those that are here today. the Royal Naval Association, Royal British Legion, the Bridlington Sea Cadets, the RNLI, military veterans and Bridlington locals, and also the Yorkshire Belle for running such a historic vessel for 75 years and keeping that name alive. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite you all to the Half Moon pub that's graciously opened its doors early just for us today in order to have a celebratory drink and remember those. I'd also like to call forward any personnel who wish to have their photographs taken around the memorial, starting with the Yorkshire Belle and the lifeboat in order for the press to get some good photographs. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much for coming today.